For Dalia Dipollito, the third time was definitely not the charm. Her third trial for attempting to hire a hitman to kill her husband ended in a guilty verdict and a long prison sentence. Who can forget this video showing Dalia being told by her husband, or at least that her husband was dead, while cameras from the show Cops are rolling? Dalia Dipollito's attorney, Brian Claypool, joins us now. So, Brian, I know you worked your heart out for her. I know this was the third trial. The second one was a hung jury. And I also know that there were some judicial rulings that you take issue with. Take us through that, Brian, and what happened at this trial that caused her to be convicted, in your view?
Hey, Joey, before they do that, I need you to set aside the fact that you're a valued friend and a mentor to myself and my daughter. And I want to set that aside for a minute, and let's look at this objectively, because you're an esteemed trial lawyer. Let's look at the legal part of this. And remember, at the second trial, you tell me, Joey, how I go from getting 5 jurors in that second trial to acquit Dalia Dipollito. We almost won that second trial. How do we go from that to a quick guilty verdict in the third trial? Well, let me tell you briefly why. Two big things.
When you say quick, Brian, it was an hour and a half that they actually, okay. So they came back with a verdict an hour and a half.
Yeah, it was about an hour and a half. And that surprised everybody, even the state prosecutor. But you heard Mike Dipollito at the sentencing hearing mention chai tea latte, some antifreeze that was put in that latte. Well, Joey, both in the first and second trial, that was never admitted. What didn't come into evidence because it would be too prejudicial to Dalia Dipollito. But in this case, on the last day of trial, the trial judge allowed it in and said he was going to let it in to impeach the confidential informant's testimony. And we argued that it doesn't impeach anything, number one, because the confidential informant, Joey, said it doesn't change his view. He didn't believe that she would do that.
Now, is it true, Brian, that originally the judge agreed and said, I'm not going to admit it, and then ultimately said, I changed my mind?
Absolutely, Joey. We had a pretrial ruling both on the chai tea latte issue, and then there was a second issue about Dalia allegedly going to Riviera Beach, Florida, 6 months prior to all of this, and allegedly talking to a guy on the street about having her husband killed. And the confidential informant, without the jury being present, I questioned him. And I said, did Dalia tell you this directly? He answered that, no. And he said, you heard this from somebody on the street? Yeah, and that guy told me that another guy told me this. I mean, I know where you're going, your mind's going with this already. That's like double hearsay. Right. That's like triple hearsay, exactly. But Joey, we had a pretrial ruling on that issue as well. Then the Riviera Beach and the chai tea latte incidents would not come into evidence in front of the jury. The judge on the last day of trial allowed both of those in for the sole reason to allegedly impeach the confidential informant. So the trial judge is saying, hey, look, I'm not letting this in for the truth of the matter, only to impeach. But Joey, you know, with your lawyer's hat as well as I do, that when the jury hears those two acts, they're convicting my client. She's toast.
No question about it. So
yeah,
what do you think?
Let me just share a chilling moment with you during trial. This was chilling. Right after the jury hears the part about the chai tea latte, the alleged antifreeze, which, by the way, Mike Dipollito never reported to the police department at all. There was never an investigation done on that. But right after that was spoken to in open court, during a break, Dalia whispered in my ear, and it killed my heart and soul. She said every single juror wrote that down. So I knew we were done at that point.
Goodness gracious. I think the prospects for perhaps a fourth trial, Brian, might be likely. And I also hear you had an issue with a juror sleeping, and that juror wasn't excluded. So much to talk about. Hopefully we'll get another opportunity to do just that. Stay right there, Brian Claypool.